Hey, welcome to the Fireside. My name is Jake. I'm really excited to get back into this illustrative tattooing series that we've been slowly adding to over the course of the last year or so. Today's guest is Nick Mitchell, who has a really interesting and unique illustrative style. He focuses, if you don't already know his work, on caricatures, but not just tattooing caricatures, like zombie caricatures in particular. He got his start doing caricature work back at Busch Gardens, I believe, years ago before he was tattooing. Now, fast forward a little while, and he's tattooing at Loose Screw with Jesse Smith, who was on just a few weeks ago. I actually got to meet Nick at the Paradise BYOB and was lucky enough to sit in on his seminar. And it was really interesting. I love it when people will take something that you know really nothing about and give you like little nuggets that help you dive right in and get started. So some of the cool things about his seminar is that we would just go through and look at photos of people and make quick decisions on whether we wanted their forehead to be bigger or their chin to be bigger, or eye placement, things like that. But just a lot of quick little nuggets where you would look at someone, make a couple of quick decisions, and then do your layout based on those quick decisions. Really, it was a good seminar. It is available, his seminar, at Reinventing the Tattoo, the digital version. So I'll make sure to link to that if you guys want to check it out. It was really worth the time. So we sat down at the Paradise BYOB. Got to know Nick a little bit. We talked a little bit about his background, his process, how that style kind of developed, and I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please be sure to thumb us up and like us and subscribe to us and do all the stuff you're supposed to do when you watch YouTube videos. Thank you as always for supporting what we do, and enjoy the episode. The series we've been working on here lately, and this is, I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Like maybe 7 or 8 episodes? We've really been focused on storytelling through tattooing, right? Illustrative style tattoos, like creating a narrative and things like that. And so when I first, I didn't think about it originally whenever I asked you on, and then as I started thinking about your work and what we might talk about, I was like, oh, it's perfect because it's a completely different kind of twist on the story. On the storytelling side of it, because just because of the type of work that you do and like the type of kind of narrative, I guess, you have to create in your own head about the person that you're doing, that you're caricature. What's the term? Caricaturizing? Okay.
I don't know. I just caricature.
Caricature, yeah. So maybe before I go too deep into it, we'll do a little bit of backstory and talk about how you got into caricature drawing, and then maybe a little bit how it's evolved. Some of the stuff that you covered in your seminar, I guess.
Well, I got my start in theme parks. I was going to school, and there was a Busch Gardens that was down the street from where I was going to school. Yeah. So there was some dude just drawing caricatures in the hallway, just really messing people up, and I thought that was awesome. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind working down the street while I'm going to school here, just making fun of people for a living. So I signed up, and before you know it, I became part of management of that theme park. Did that for roughly 8 years or so. And then from there, I stepped back from management, worked SeaWorld a little bit in Orlando, and then just started doing more kind of special events, like parties like Super Bowl, or, the small parties like birthday parties or corporate functions. And then from there, it went to fairs and festivals.
This is all for the same kind of company? They just kind of spanned all of this stuff, or were you bouncing around?
No, I was bouncing around. The first 8 years, like theme parks, that was one separate company. After I left theme parks, it was more like freelance work, where I would just hop on, jobs here and there.
Yeah. Until
finally, Sean Gardner and I, we teamed up and started doing zombie caricatures at conventions. So like horror conventions, Comic-Cons, and then eventually tattoo conventions, which ended up paying off pretty well.
Yeah. So you weren't tattooing, you were just doing the caricatures at getting a booth and doing caricatures at the tattoo conventions.
Yeah.
Did you consider that you wanted to be a tattooer at that point, or that just seemed like a good spot to do zombie caricatures?
We were just doing zombie caricatures. As far as Sean, on his end, he wanted a tattoo. It was like one of his his dreams, his goals. Mm-hmm. Me, I didn't have any plans past zombies. So I was just, kind of riding that wave, having fun with it. And I know once he got his apprenticeship, I started thinking, okay, what's my next step? Do I still continue doing zombies and try to make that a solo kind of act and hire people to help? Or do I just take that next step and try to tattoo as well? Because, we're in the industry for years drawing everybody as zombies. So it's like, why not give it a shot,
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, let's try looking for an apprenticeship, and I started kind of shopping around.
Yeah. Were you and Sean like collaborating a lot on when you were sharing booths? Were you drawing on the same zombie, or were you each like working separately? Like I'm drawing this dude, and you're drawing that lady, or whatever.
When it came to live events, we were drawing separately. So yeah, he had his client in front of him, and me in front of mine, and we would just draw. And 10 minutes later, they're dead, looking gross, and out the door, and on to the next. But as far as like commission work, it depends on the client. Sometimes they wanted us to collab on things, and we would. So there's a good handful of ones that we both kind of tackled and screwed them up.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
Well, I assume you weren't doing a lot of zombies at theme parks, though, right? So where did the zombies kind of come into play?
After I left theme parks and started doing like just special events, Sean was still at Busch Gardens drawing, because that's where we met. We met at that theme park. And he wanted to work a horror convention. He's worked it before, so this I think was the second time that he was thinking about going in for it. And I wasn't doing anything at the time, just freelance work here and there. So I was like, he wasn't sure if he was going to make money at it or not, or if, zombie characters would work. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'll pay for half the booth. Let me hop on, whatever happens, happens. And we just gave it a shot. And I remember that Saturday of that convention weekend, we had a line of people waiting at the booth before we showed up, and we looked at each other like, oh man, what just happened? And then we realized we stumbled onto something kind of cool, and we just rode the wave,
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, there's a handful of things I'd like to go into, and I loved your seminar. It was really good. I love a lot of the practical application stuff, and we have a similar, even though our work is not similar, we have a similar process in how my first day seminar was called Simplify, and although yours wasn't called that, the term you use a lot is simplify to intensify. So our process, I think, is pretty similar. But what I loved was that you gave like some real actionable kind of like questions that you ask yourself early on in the caricature design process. Like is the head bigger above the eye or below the eye? That's one of those little things that you can just look for and go like, okay, I've made that decision. It's up to me. And then I can start drawing. And I think just getting that first step, that type of stuff that you can plug into your existing process, I think is so valuable.
As artists, we are problem solvers. That's what we're doing the majority of the time. Yeah. So why not ask yourself those questions right away to get that visual caricature in your head before you even waste time trying to attempt something. So it's just that visualize before you go into it. And the simplify to intensify, just breaking it down into shapes to its bare bone simplicity, and just build from that.
Yeah. So when it comes to the kind of storytelling and the narrative part of your work, the one thing that's interesting about what you're doing is you are messing people up, and you're kind of making fun of maybe something they could be completely self-conscious about. You may or may not even know how self-conscious they are about it. So I think there's probably a lot of layers there, a lot of ways to kind of approach it when it comes to kind of how you're choosing how to manipulate them. Like what kind of, I guess I'll just throw a couple of things out there and then just let you kind of run with it. Like, do you have a narrative of the type of zombie or character that they are? Or is it things about their personality or their features that make you kind of like draw, like have this opinion about the type of narrative you're going to create for this person?
It's a lot of everything. I think first thing you start with is the caricature itself, and then the way you exaggerate and tell the story on how you see that person. That kind of leads into the zombie aspect of it. So if they have a big forehead, you can wedge a hole through it or a weapon through it, or you have, that space to really mess it up without covering an important feature, And then when it comes to tattoos, not only are you telling a story about how you see that person, because every caricature artist sees somebody different. So every time you see a new caricature of that same celebrity, it looks different. That's how they saw it. So that's the story. But with the tattoo, now you have to lay out a story, background, interactions, there's other characters, other things going on. And I think a lot of that comes to the layout and design of the tattoo, because almost like a comic book page, you want to be able to have people look where you want them to at specific points to tell the story, frame to frame in a comic book. Well, on a sleeve, for example, you might have a focal point up top and then movement and flow directs you to a different part of the story and so on throughout the sleeve, all the way throughout the piece, just like a painting. You control the viewer's eye. So it's just interesting, how many levels of storytelling that could be in your art that you're not even realizing you're doing too. Yeah,
and then you have the literal in your work, the literal type of supporting kind of elements and things, like the one piece the dude was a photographer, so you kind of shoved a camera through his jaw or whatever. Like you have like literal things you can do, you can use to tell kind of their story, and then also the way that all the things you just described that kind of tell your story about that person, melded all together a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the personal commissions, you ask simple questions, you'll get what you need. Ask what they do for a living, what they do for a hobby, what their favorite anything is, and you kind of start building off of that. And if you use any of that as a weapon, destroy their face with it, But yeah, and as far as celebrities, or maybe it's a scene from a movie that you're tattooing or whatever, that's already a story involved that people might be familiar with. So you want to kind of illustrate that a certain way. And yeah, it's fun.
One thing that Jesse brought up about your work during our last podcast, he tries not to look at reference when he starts to create, his work, so that it has kind of a more kind of his kind of thumbprint in it from the beginning. He's not too influenced by it. I do the same. And he mentioned that in your case, you're kind of you've got both sides of the brain kind of involved, because you have to use reference to work from the person, but you also have to be able to make your own kind of marks to describe them in a way that really doesn't look that much like them. You're having to really exaggerate things. So what do you think about it that way? I mean, how do you use them as reference, I guess, is the question.
Well, I mean, caricature, I just need multiple references to get an understanding of their face. And the goal is to make the caricature look more like them than they do, because you're enhancing what they have. You're not distorting, you're exaggerating. Right. Already forgot the question.
Yeah, like looking at them and using their literal, using their face as reference, but then also having to draw from imagination.
Yeah, because it's like when you're looking from reference, if it's a good enough photo or reference, you'll have the proper lighting you need, you have all the shadows, you have all the, features, and you figure out how you want to exaggerate, and kind of build on top of that to make it your own. Mm-hmm. So there's a good mix of both at all times. You're pulling from the reference, but you're also changing it, according to how you want to push it, how you want people to see it, how you want them to see it. Yeah. So it's a lot of both. It doesn't matter if it's an animal or what it may be. I'm still trying to exaggerate from life and make it mine. Yeah. So right. Yeah, a lot of photo references, a lot of drawing, a lot of pushing and pulling and tinkering to figure out, what's what.
I think you would, but you really, and I asked you before your seminar earlier this weekend, whatever, that about whether or not you use their photos and digitally enhance them, which I see some caricature type folks doing, like actually using pucker and blow, whatever the terms are on Photoshop, to like blow one eye up and like pull the nose and liquefy and all that kind of stuff. And I started to ask you if you use that. You're like, no, it's all kind of manual. And then as you were doing the seminar and I was looking at your work, I was like, oh yeah, you couldn't have, it wouldn't look anything like that if you did that. And I started to picture caricature. I don't know a lot of caricature artists by name, but ones that I know do that type of thing. And it's funny because when I look at what you're doing and look at that seems, it may look just like the person. They may do a great job rendering it and get a lot of crazy tones, flesh tones and stuff, but it looks more kind of generic or predictable or obvious to me.
Yeah, I think if they're manipulating a photo, it's something about it comes out stiff. Yeah. It's not real organic, Right. But I mean, if I were to do that, it would be kind of redundant for me. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you still have to be a caricature artist in order to know what to push and pull if you're manipulating a photo as well. But you lose your handprint on it. Your handwriting, if you will. You lose your style. You don't. We all lay lines and marks down a certain way. So why take away from that? Just have that kind of be the driving force.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's tough to. It'd be tough to kind of invent your marks, in the tattoo process, whenever everything leading up to that was done by manipulating, a photo, which is why I personally, I have a lot of respect for people who pull off really great realism, but it's never been something that I'm that interested in, because it's just, it's hard to really get your own kind of marks in there, Now the greats in my presentation, I used a couple of examples of people who do pull that off, who like Butcher and Nico Hurtado, who definitely have different types of marks for sure, but they're kind of at the highest level of that, that type of tattooing. And I would say that 80% of people doing color realism, from working from photo reference, it just has kind of a stiff uninteresting look.
I mean, I would love to see one of those guys exaggerate what they're doing.
Yeah.
Apply that realism to it. Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be a whole new animal.
I think some of the best portrait painters do. They do kind of caricaturize people. I mean, not to make them look wacky or goofy or exaggerate, but the ones who actually pull the most kind of like personality out of the person or kind of really catch the essence of the person. I think that they're probably using a lot of the same kind of tools that you are as a caricature artist.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, just little slight exaggerations in the right way. Like I said, it amplifies it and makes it look a little more like them. Especially if it comes to like how they take up space. Are they excited? Are they, kind of mopey? All that's relevant, to a person or a character or whatnot. It gives a feel, feeling. So. Yeah.
One thing I've been trying. These conversations have gone all over the place, but I've tried to pull them back and ask a handful of similar questions just so we can compare like apples and apples, one illustrative style tattooer to another. One thing that I've asked and I've gotten consistently different answers on is how important it is to you that the viewer, not necessarily the person wearing the tattoo, but that the viewer gets the narrative that you were trying to like convey, or if you're happy with them kind of creating their own story from the piece.
I mean, given the space that you're working in, there's probably always going to be some kind of level of interpretation, but for the most part, I think it's very important. I want people to look at the sleeve, and I want to be able to try to figure out where they're going to look first, second, third, fourth, and have a story being told that way. Yeah. And I definitely lay things out very methodical. Where I want things to be placed. Sorry, I kind of lost track now.
No, that was the question. It's funny. I've got a handful of different answers, and asking, Jesse. Of course, he's created this like world and these characters that live in this world, and to a certain extent, there's basically no way that anyone could look at it and really know what his world. They probably don't have the context that he does about the world. Like until today, I didn't even know that there was a world. I'd never heard that story.
I'm not sure if he's still doing it, but he used to narrate a lot of it. So when you see a post on Instagram and whatnot, it would be a whole story underneath explaining what was going on. This character's mad at this one and so on. So that'll definitely help.
Unless they see it like at the mall.
Well, true. Yeah, but I don't know. I think just like with comic books, it's like you want the viewer to know majority of what's going on without reading a single word. And I feel that tattoos is very important as well. You want people to kind of get the gist of what's happening. Mm-hmm. The only example I could think of a big enough piece I did was like a Krampus leg sleeve. And Krampus is all huge and evil, taking up a good section. But then if you follow down, you'll see kids trying to rip out of the sack and escape. You have another kid in the back defending herself against a jack-in-a-box that's attacking her. But the way it's laid out, if you start from him, the biggest piece, focal point, you work your way all the way around to the back, you get the full gist of it.
Yeah.
There's not even much of a background. I have a little bit of a chimney here on one side of the inner thigh. The rest of it's just pretty much characters doing the work for the story there.
Yeah.
But people know that story as well, and if you don't, then there might have to be some explanation. But if you know what Krampus is, then you see it, you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
and that probably, that's funny. That was going to be my next question: is there a piece that you think that really represented that kind of storytelling or a narrative that we could lay in and kind of show people? So that'd be a good example. And I think also, even when you're like laying something out as big as a leg sleeve, that kind of simplify to intensify applies even more, because you have room to add all kinds of stuff that could easily become disruptive or competitive, and I think that people who do it, a lot of people really do a great job of laying in a lot of underlying elements, things that are kind of like, backgrounds that, that you kind of have to, maybe you see the tattoo 2 or 3 times before you realize like, oh, I didn't even realize that piece or whatever. And that's really cool. But I think it really takes the skill set that it takes to pull that, well, not just the skill set, but the research and work that it takes to develop the skills to pull that kind of thing off is
I think intense. If you're doing a big sleeve and you're trying to, I think laying it all out as one piece together is going to help you not get so detailed, putting all this little busy stuff in everything, because you're drawing it as one solid piece. Because I get in that habit if I'm doing maybe a sleeve where there's several different pieces in there, and I'm sitting here just kind of stamping along, and then all of a sudden, before you know, things might be busy somewhere or a little confusing in pockets. But if you have the ability to lay it all out in one shot, go for it. It's going to simplify things and give yourself that bigger open areas. It's going to heal right, and you can cause movement with that depending on what elements you have, background.
Yeah.
It could be smoke from the chimney, it could be a flash from the Jack in the Box action lines or whatever, but anything you can do with the background to guide the viewer along is going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it again. Yeah, I'm going to stop doing that. I answer that's like, I'll cut it out. Every time someone finishes talking, I go, yeah. Another thing I wanted to bring up along those lines was talk about how everything kind of flows together. It was interesting to see your process for kind of your layout of that Beetlejuice piece, because although you're laying it out, you'll knock everything else out of your way and just work on one of the characters, just work on the tombstone, and then kind of pull it back and drop it back in. Is that just so you can focus on that one? Do you get distracted by looking at the piece as a whole? Why do you break it away like that?
See, that's the opposite. I was talking about Krampus. I designed all at once. I did all the line work, everything all together. I started coloring top to bottom.
Okay.
This one, it's a Tim Burton sleeve, but they want different movies, so it's pretty much paneled in a way. So I can get away with just focusing on Beetlejuice, and the reason I did this is because I want to be able to have posts sooner than later. So I'm like, let's get Beetlejuice done, snap a shot. I can move on to Nightmare Before Christmas, which is going to be the bottom part, and so on.
Right.
But that's the one I have to be careful on, not to get crazy and put too much busy work in one section. So now that I'm down here, I have to bridge the gap and try to treat it as one piece.
Yeah. So you knew that they wanted the entire sleeve at once. So I guess to an extent, you're probably visualizing when you're laying Beetlejuice in. There's some idea of like, all right, Nightmare Before Christmas might have the big wacky hill that's going to make that transition, or whatever it is. You at least in your mind, you've kind of mapped that out, or
before I even started drawing, I already had at least the outer sleeve from shoulder to wrist already figured out mentally, and then I just worked on here, and then the bottom part I have. Was Boogie Boys? I don't remember the individual names, but they'll be kind of trickled down to lead the the viewer from outer arm to inner arm, which will be Jack and Sally. And then inner arm I think is Coraline, which isn't Tim Burton, I don't think, but it's around the same genre, and I guess it's a daughter's favorite movie. So I'm like, let's shove that in there.
Gotcha. So when you're doing that kind of stuff, it becomes pretty important to find another way to make it look like it all lives in the same world, right? Whether that's through the environment or the color, or the way that it flows from one to another.
Yeah, color definitely too as well, not just what you're drawing. Because I already, on the tombstone back here, I have little subtle oranges and purples and kind of cool colors that I definitely want to pull through the rest of the tattoo. Just things like that,
Yeah, I think that stuff is important, and I try my best to think about it whenever I'm like butting up into, say they already have a piece on their deltoid, and I'm making a sleeve off of it. Unless the sleeve unless the existing piece is just complete garbage, I try my best to at least mimic the shapes of it, or something in the color, so that it doesn't look kind of so disruptive. Making that capping the top of the piece out, or whatever.
Trying to bridge the gap between yours and theirs. Pretty much.
And I think a lot of times, definitely when you're butting up against other people's work, but even whenever you're designing, a sleeve that's going to be done in panels like that, it's something you got to put a lot of thought into. And I feel like a lot of people really don't. Like you said, you wanted to get that first kind of photo or post or whatever.
Yeah, I'm chopped. That's what's fun. Like, I want just now. I didn't want to wait until months later.
I think, damn, I did it again. But I think that a lot of people probably don't have the forethought to especially beginning tattooers who work that way. And for a little while, I did a Monday morning drawing group with Reinventing the Tattoo, and I would just get up and work on my drawings from like 8 to 9 a.m. on Monday mornings, and people would jump in and work, and you would see people starting to put, this is going to be a sleeve, and it's like, they're like, okay, and they're just doing the top part for now. And it's like, well, what happens from there? Well, we haven't gotten that far yet. We're just going to start with this. And it's like, well, man, you can start with that, but you really ought to know what comes next, at least in your head, at least in the thumbnail form or something.
Oh yeah, you always have to be mentally like 10 steps ahead of what you're actually working on. And as you're working, you keep that distance, that forward momentum mentally. So now while I'm working on the Boogie Boys, I'll be figuring out how to, I'll probably draw the whole bottom part together, to be honest with you, because there's a cover up in there. So I got to still figure that out. But I think I'll just do the whole inner form all together. But and not only that, but it's knowing the person's anatomy, your client's anatomy. You know, I got the photos that I needed to know the shape of the arm, how big the arm is, how wide the arm is, to where I know where things should stop and start, and where I can have like some kind of bridge from one panel to the next.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I mean, luckily it's been working out, you know, with the photos. I mean, I used to do the same thing where I used to have the client come in, you know, get the nice tracing, get everything measured and landmarked. But since COVID, we've been doing phone consultations. So now we're just doing photographs. But being that I send them photographs, exactly what I need, using myself as the model, you know, they give me what I need in return, and it's been working out so far.
Has it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was curious. I've tried, you know, before you know, phone cameras and all of that, I traced everything. But like I mentioned in my seminar, I didn't really know how to trace back then. I like how to map the body accurately.
Yeah.
And then I started relying on taking photos and stitching them all together, and I found that the transitions were different than I expected them to be. And so I had stuff overlapping, and I wanted it to end here and it ended here. And so I struggled with that. And so I finally settled on this hybrid thing where I accurately map with tracing paper and take the photographs and stitch it all together. And that's worked great, but I wouldn't be able to pull it off. Definitely when I have people coming in from out of town and we don't get that in-person consultation, it's more of a struggle, more of a crapshoot for me when they show up. It's like, if I'm able to map their body, I can lay the stencil the first try and we're tattooing in 30 minutes, you know, on a sleeve. And if not, I'm like, man, we might be here 2 hours with me drawing before we ever tattoo. I don't know.
No, I agree with your method. It's the more information you have up front, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, the better it's going to be to lay things out. So, you know, I still, you know, with the way we're doing, I feel like I'm guessing a little bit. And, you know, if I have to make adjustments, I try to just figure out what I can resize, or, you know, obviously I can't change the face or distort it, because if you pull anything there, it's going to change the likeness.
Yeah.
But there's always usually a background element that I can maybe nudge a little bit, how to, you know, to fill in this part a little bit better, you know.
Yeah.
But it hasn't gotten to the point where it's like, oh man, I really got to restructure this whole tattoo or anything like that, you know.
Yeah. Changing gears a little bit, the type of caricature work that you're doing is like a really believable caricature, right? I mean, it looks like something that could actually, it has all the cast shadows, it has really like, you know, kind of fleshy tones a lot of times, but particularly in the tattoos that I've seen you'll do, it's like almost like a realistic caricature. I wonder, I know you photograph them with the expression that you're trying to get out of them, but I wonder, anytime I've tried to play with expressions on people and exaggerate expressions, I end up losing their likeness kind of really quickly. Do you have any like tips on how things change as their expressions change? Like, is there anything that you kind of think of that you can kind of just go to, bullet points? You're like, when I want them to look more surprised, their eyes typically do this, or their nose typically.
It's just based on their face, you know. So if you want them to have expression, you have to have that expression in all your photos, and you need multiple angles. So you'll need straightforward, 3/4 each way, a good profile shot to see what's upturned or shooting at you, you know, to get that third dimension. But as far as pushing it, just exaggerating what they have. If you see something interesting, try to push it, see what happens. If you lose a likeness, pull it back, and, you know, try something else. The way the iPads are now, you know, it's not a lot of, you know, tearing through paper and having to redraw it over and over again. You can actually just, you know, nudge things over, or, you know, erase something and just put it back in. You know, it's easier now.
Yeah.
But the most important part is, yeah, if you want an expression, every photo has to have the expression. Yeah. And there's times where maybe I couldn't figure out their expression, so I just rethink the game plan and have them look in a different manner, you know, change expression up. You know, it's tricky because when you're drawing somebody live, you're talking to them, right? Interacting with them, you see how they're responding to you, you see how they're taking up space, you see all the facial expressions and how they naturally use it. That's what you want from everybody, but we don't have that. So a lot of times when people pose in photos, it's a fake smile. And that might be the reason why you can't get the likeness right, because they're forcing it versus having that candid, you know, kind of smile or reaction to something, you know. So that's a tricky thing too.
So you have an easier time drawing, like, say, drawing caricatures at Busch Gardens with people's, even their expressions changing in front of you and all that, just because you're seeing them be genuine. That's easier than drawing from the photographs?
I can't say it's easier, but you do get more information out of it.
Gotcha.
You really do. I mean, with the photographs, you have more time to spend with it, so you can get more detailed, but live, you have that, you know, spontaneous kind of thing going on where you can actually get a feel of who that person really is and you can apply it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just different. You know?
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but in that exact way. But you're exactly right. Thinking about when you see yourself in a photograph, I was always intimidated by taking on portrait tattooing. I love painting portraits, and I think I'm pretty good at it. I paint them in oil. I'm not a master portrait painter, but I work on it a lot. Yeah. And but I've never wanted to transition to tattooing portraits. And I felt like one of the things is I typically, first off, I'm placing this photo on an imperfect surface where, even the slightest, if my nostril goes from this to this, I look like a different person, and so you're already wrapping it on the skin. And then I think, man, I'm looking at a photo that may or may not look like this person at all. And I'm putting it on someone who obviously knew this person intimately, or they wouldn't be getting the photo of it or getting the tattoo of it. Yeah. And it's like the odds are so stacked against you trying to like pull off a likeness on skin. And obviously it's real doable because people do it all the time. But all of those like ticks against it for me, it's just like, meh, I'll just do flowers or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you have to really pay attention to their body and where to place the tattoo. Like I have one coming up that's going to be on the back of a calf. And he never sent me a photo of his calf, so I really don't know what his calf looks like. So when he shows up, if it's too muscular, I'm going to be like, yo, you got to get this tattoo somewhere else because I need a flatter area to fit this person's face in there.
Right.
Otherwise I would have drawn the caricature for that body part and made it a good size where it fit in that pocket, that ball of muscle back here, But yeah, we'll see how it goes. He'll come in, we'll see. Maybe he'll have some open skin I can put on a thigh instead, hopefully. Some flatter area, And
that's just another kind of COVID thing. He's someone that just didn't get the photo over, but you typically would have done it in person. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, because I could have talked to him about it then if it wasn't going to work. Oh, maybe we should try it over here instead. But now he's been waiting 3 months. And I would have like, surprise! I didn't get a photo. And
well, let's before we wrap it up, let's talk just a little bit about your seminar here, which is did I mention where Paradise View? I mentioned it in the intro. Somewhere, something I clipped in here has already told you where we are. And so yesterday you did a seminar that was webcast, and it's on reinventing the tattoo, and it's about caricature and your process. So what made you decide to put a seminar together or to start teaching caricature drawing?
Well, the original seminar, Sean and I did together, and we did it for the caricature community. They have ISCA, it's the International Society of Caricature Artists, I think. Maybe I got it wrong. Yeah. But they have a convention every year, and they asked us to present, a seminar for zombie caricatures, and
that's kind of an honor, huh?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, definitely. And then once Jesse Smith started doing the Richmond Tattoo Convention, he approached me to do a Caricature 101 seminar, and then I kind of just revamped the old seminar and just kind of gutted it out, put all new stuff, and just changed it and make it more of toward the tattoo community.
Yeah.
So pretty much it's Caricature 101. So it covers pretty much exaggeration, likeness, relationship between features. I break it down step by step, every feature, every line I draw. It's really broken down to its simplest form.
Yeah.
And then it's interactive. So there'll be people that are attending will draw, and I'll critique, and we'll draw each other and have some fun.
Yeah. Super cool. I loved how you took it. You went all the way through the zombifying process. So it's like all the way into like the muscles of the face. So if you're gonna rot and remove skin, at least you know what direction that muscle is going underneath the cheek or whatever it is.
Yeah, because those muscles give us our face shape. And if you're just throwing spaghetti in there, just mixing it up, it's not going to match up right. It's going to look wonky. Something's going to look wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to know the anatomy and at least what the muscles do and what they're pulling, so you know where to place them when you draw them.
Yeah.
And then just make sure that it lines up with your exaggeration. And it's important to know even when it comes to regular caricatures, because like I said, your muscles underneath the flesh is giving you the shape, same thing with your skull. So in order to understand why that person looks like they do, it's good to know what's underneath the skin. It helps.
The thing that you mentioned that like caught me, it was funny as you started drawing or you showed an example of the skull, and you said like the skull is gonna be the same shape as the face, and I was like, yeah, I knew that part. But then you think like, no, if I were to draw a caricature, I would probably have like the face and I was showing the skull. I would just have like a generic skull. You know what I mean? It's like a skull, but not necessarily their skull. And so that's funny. It's like the thing that separates people who are really like, exceptional at what they do versus just people who do a pretty good job at it. It's all those little things. Like the skull, like if they have a really pronounced chin, then you're looking at their skull, it has a really pronounced chin. It's like that level of consistency. And even though when you say it out loud, you go like, yeah, of course that's obvious. If you were to just draw it, and no one told you, you wouldn't draw it that way. Yeah, you would draw just a regular skull.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, well, cool. Well, I'll wrap it up. I really appreciate you doing this, guys.
Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to. If you're interested in the Caricature 101 seminar, check it out at Reinventing's, on their app, wherever. It'll be in the show notes, right? Just look right there. It's right below us. And thanks, as always, for supporting what we do, and we'll catch you next time. Hey, thanks again for watching. All of the seminars from the Paradise BYOB that we put on back in October are available for replay over at Reinventing the Tattoo. So while you're there looking at Nick's seminar, you can check out all of the other ones that everyone did, including my own. I did a 2-day or a 2-part seminar that's available over there as well. Don't forget, one of the great ways to support us is by using our affiliate codes when you're buying the supplies that you already need and already buy. So you can get discounts on inks with raw pigments, Numa tattoo machines, you get 10% off. Reinventing the Tattoo subscription, 10% off. All of our affiliate codes are in the video description below. It gives you a discount on stuff that you're already buying and gives us a little bit of a kickback so we can continue to make these videos. Thanks as always for supporting what we do. See you next time.